Namaste and welcome all to the 11th Bhagavad Gita study meeting. Today, the topic of our discussion will be primarily focused on the 11th chapter, which explains about the Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga, that is, the vision of the divine form as including all the forms. In the third and fourth shloka of chapter 11, we see that Arjuna is sincerely requesting Lord Krishna to let him see the imperishable cosmic form. Now, here we need to note that Lord Krishna did not show the universal form to Arjuna until he sincerely, genuinely, and humbly requests him for the same. And then in slide 3, the next one, we see that in shloka 5, 6, 7, Lord Krishna talks about his hundreds and thousands of wonderful forms and provides description about the various beings in the cosmos. He talks about the 12 sons of Aditi, the 8 Vasus, the 11 Rudras, the twin Ashwini Kumaras, the 49 Maruts. And then he says, there are many, many more marvels which I will tell you about, which have never ever been revealed before. And then again in Shloka 8, he says to Arjuna, but you will not be able to comprehend and appreciate all this unless I provide you with vision, that is a spiritual vision. Because since your physical eyes have quite a limited scope of vision. Further, the reason, if we try to understand what was the reason why or the purpose of Lord Krishna to show Arjuna the divine form, then we can think about, for example, if there is a person who has never seen different types of colors, maybe that person is color blind, then even if theoretically we explain to that person everything about the nature and quality of the light, colors, frequency, he may understand theoretically everything. Still, he will not completely comprehend unless he rather first hand perceives the colors, or he sees for himself the colors. So he is able to differentiate between the spectrum of colors based on his own vision. That is, in his own experience, with his own first hand experience. So, similarly, we may have information and knowledge, but still, even if we know all the scriptures, we know the entire secret doctrine, we know all the books under the sun, or all the Vedas, all the Upanishads, still we will not be able to comprehend the ultimate final truth unless we directly perceive it. In other words, directly realize it. So, direct realization is required. But direct realization happens with our own efforts. However, here Arjuna was karmically due for the divine vision, at least for some time. And he had reached that level of purified state wherein Krishna became duty bound to provide him with the divine vision. However, this vision was short termed and limited to only some time, but good enough for him to experience the divine form. Now, going back to chapter 10, also there is an interesting shloka 16 and 17, wherein Arjuna actually sincerely requests Lord Krishna here also. He says, please describe to me your divine opulences by which you pervade all the worlds and reside in them. O Supreme Master of Yoga, how may I know you and think of you? And while meditating, in what forms can I think of you, O Supreme Divine Personality? So this is important since Arjuna was not able to directly focus his mind on the formless, nirguna, attributeless aspect of Krishna or the higher self. Here, his request pertains to ascertain the most appropriate form which Lord Krishna himself will recommend for meditation. So, coming back here in chapter 11, we see that Lord Krishna makes Arjuna experience by showing him the divine form that everything under the spiritual sun exists in one reality and is supported by the one reality. Everything is temporary except the one reality. So, but we see there were some after effects when Arjuna received this divine vision and he was able to perceive the divine form. The result was that he realized by this demonstration of Krishna that everything, all manifestation exists in self, in Krishna. So Krishna is a substratum, or that one self, or that one pure consciousness, or that one absolute reality is the substratum. The beingness is the substratum, and everything exists in that. Also, Arjuna became overwhelmed and terrified after seeing the varied forms and the immense scope of beings across various worlds and galaxies. And the divine vision shattered Arjuna's familiar image of Krishna as a friend, as a human being, as a charioteer. He felt small, he felt powerless, and deeply humbled before the infinite impersonal force of cosmic law. And further, his whole body trembled, his mind reeled, and he confessed that his heart was unstable with fear. And overwhelmed, Arjuna then praised Krishna's majesty and begged forgiveness for any past casualness and pleaded for Krishna to return to his normal human form. And further, we see that Krishna obliges and he first appears in a four armed form, and in the next stage, he resumes his normal two armed form like normal human beings. By this time, what happens? Arjuna no longer has his divine vision anymore. So, we may ask the question, why do we need the divine vision to see the divine form? And we need to understand that the entire cosmos, if you see, is actually uh, sevenfold, and seven levels are there, further sub levels. So it is 49 planes of consciousness and gradations. Each plane has a different level of dimension, time, consciousness, perception, unique to its own prakriti. Everything is time matured based on cycles within cycles, based on the net karma of that particular plane, and interrelated with all other worlds and planes. There are seven levels of perception possible, seven aspects of mind involved on each plane. So the mind which is working on this plane will not work on the higher plane. You have a different aspect of the mind. In order to comprehend all the 49 levels in its totality, one needs to be in complete harmony and alignment with the whole. And all the 49 fires in us should be purified and active. That is, all our vehicles and principles need to be purified and active. The instrument of divine vision, which is also the third eye, the pineal gland, should be active to perceive and comprehend this whole cosmos in its totality. And the individual ego, Jivatma, we need to realize is one with the universal self. And there is direct correspondence. So we will see how it happens that everything is a copy of everything. And so the macrocosm is a copy of microcosm, and microcosm is a copy of macrocosm. And also in the macrocosm, each part is a copy of the whole. And similarly, in the microcosm, each part is a copy of the whole. And the divine form includes all forms and is a substratum of the manifested world. Further, it contains within it the potentiality of all forms and forces. So, in order to comprehend this completely, one can understand this theoretically. But the divine vision was required for Arjuna to actually get this first hand experience, as we have already discussed. Because if first hand experience is not there, you will not understand completely. For example, like we shared the idea of the color. Now, take another example. Let's say mm, there's a person who has no idea how the moon looks like, and or what is moon. So you would explain to him that moon is a kind of a, let's say, dead planet or a, entity or a satellite which is out there in the sky. Every night it is visible, and there is a light which is reflected by the sun, and so on and so forth. And it has got craters, and it has got phases. It waxes, it wanes. The person will understand all this theoretically, but until and unless he sees the moon firsthand, he will not get the full knowledge, comprehension, understanding, realization. So, similarly, ultimately, the divine vision is required to understand in totality and realize in totality the absolute truth. Now, we saw in previous slides that Arjuna wanted to know the most appropriate form of meditation, which is mentioned in chapter 10. But we may ask the question that what will Arjuna achieve through knowing this most appropriate form? And why do we say knowing or seeing this divine vision is a form of yoga? Now, since using the divine vision, um, um, or rather, since using this vision of the divine universal form, what happens is that we are able to attune ourselves, we are able to unite ourselves, and we are able to harmonize ourselves with that frequency of the one self or the beingness, and we are able to identify with one and all. And in this way, we realize the absolute truth that we are actually one with all, there is no separateness. And only with this attunement, harmonizing with that frequency, it is possible. And that is why this yoga is done, wherein you are contemplating on that form and attuning yourself, harmonizing yourself, identifying yourself, becoming one with all. But if you do not know which appropriate form to use, then your meditation will not be that effective. So Arjuna was asking Lord Krishna, tell me what is the most appropriate form, because I cannot think of the formless. I need a form, but you tell me the most appropriate form on which I can meditate and come in union with you, become one with you, realize the truth, and harmonize with you. But what happens while practicing this yoga? And it is mentioned in the Secret Doctrine that um, if we are practicing this yoga, for with every effort of will towards purification and unity with that, one of the lower rays breaks, and the spiritual entity of man is drawn higher and ever higher to the ray that supersedes the first, until from ray to ray, the inner man is drawn into the one and the highest beam of the parent sun. And this is valid for all types of devotions and meditations. But with the devotion of the universal form, it is very much potent. And but in order to perform this yoga, we need the divine vision, and we don't have the divine vision as of now. So how do we perform this yoga? But even before attempting, we need to have some idea. We need to have some idea about the divine form. So let's first try to understand what is the divine form based on, and we'll get some hints from Secret Doctrine. We'll see what Secret Doctrine teaches us. And now the important thing is that while we are trying to understand and comprehend about the divine form, during the next following slides, we need to try to form a vision of the divine form in our minds during this learning process. It may not be perfect, but we need to start reaching the higher levels of our mind and raise our consciousness or raise consciously our perception to the level of the divine form by degrees as much as we can. This process of contemplating, trying to understand the divine form, raising your perception to higher levels is known as the yoga of the divine form. If we keep on contemplating like this on that, then slowly over time, our perception and ideation of the divine form will evolve and we will get more and more understanding. So now here we see that there are actually various. Now, what we are doing is in the next few slides, as we said, we are trying to understand what the divine form is. Because if we do not have some comprehension of the divine form, we will not be able to meditate on the divine form. And if we are not able to meditate on the divine form, we will not be able to perform the yoga of the divine form. So let's first try to understand the various states of logos. So here we have the unmanifested logos, which we also label it as the first logos. And then we have the manifesting logos, which is the second logos. From that stage, we have the next stage which arrives, which is the manifested logos, which is the third logos. Now, please note that there are different states of the same one logos. We don't have three different logos as such. Generally, people think that there are three different logos out there. And the analogy given here is that think of a potential bud or potential flower bud in a tree. And that potential bud becomes a bud and then becomes a flower, and then the flower dies after some time. And this process repeats itself, but note that the potential bud is always there. So the unmanifested logos is always there. And then it expresses itself as the bud, that is the manifesting logos, and then as the flower, that is the manifested logos, periodically only. Similarly is the case with the logos. So what happens is that it is the one same latent potential point which gets periodically active. And now let us also try to understand the process of manifestation, because if we need to get a full picture of this divine form, what is happening. So now in this we have the unmanifested logos, which is the first logos, as we just discussed. But from this unmanifested logos, we can actually have many manifesting logos, second logos. Now here n represents, could be one, two, or many. But this we are not 100% sure, because in Secret Doctrine it seems this is possible. Some places it's written, and at other places it seems it's a gray area. So maybe it's possible. But also HPP explains that everything mentioned in Secret Doctrine is only from our plane of consciousness, and even the greatest dhyanis don't know about our system that is beyond the page 200 diagram given in the Secret Doctrine. So the question may be asked that, is our system everything comprising from the unmanifested logos, or is it just pertaining to the manifested logos? Because if we have to understand the divine form, Are we talking about divine form only of our system, or are we talking about the divine form of the entire so-called uh, manifestation or existence in the absolute abstract container? So the question may be asked that is our system everything comprising from the unmanifested logos, or is it pertaining only to the manifested logos? But when we are thinking of the divine form, it should be ideally encompassing everything in the absolute container, that is the absolute abstract space. Now, further, we see that from the manifesting logos, we can have one or more manifested logos. That is the third logos. And this third logos is also known as Mahat Brahma. And we note that each of these units, from unmanifested to manifested, can be called and thought of as a monad. So we can even call the uh, unmanifesting logos as unmanifesting monad, and a manifesting logos as a manifesting monad. But then we have the manifested monad at this stage, that is the third logos. And the interesting part is that monad is a umbrella term, it's a generic term. Like Fohath is also a generic term. Akasha is also a generic term. So monad is thought of as an independent system, as an independent entity. So monad can be a unit, an entity, a cosmos, a galaxy, a universe, and all these are interchangeable terms. So the important point is that this manifested logos is what we are talking about as the page 200 diagram. That is, it has 3 arupa planes and 4 rupa planes. And we can have many such manifested logos. So what is happening here is that each manifested logos has a different keynote. That is why each world, or rather universe is a better word, and we can also say system, is different. So each system is different from other systems. Each manifested system is different. So each Brahma in each manifested system is of a different type. The Brahma of our world or our system is mentioned as having 4 heads. That is just a blind, uh, but it represents the 4 Maharajas. So, similarly, it could be possible that Brahma of a different world or a system could be 7 headed or 5 headed, and there could be 7 or 5 Maharajas there. We don't know. But for sure, 100%, uh, there are many manifested logos. So we need to also see that each of these third logos is of a different frequency and of a factor of 7. So there is some kind of a intelligence and law wherein these manifested logos are dependent upon. And we need to understand that each of these systems are unique in nature. So, was the vision of Arjuna about our system, or was the vision of Arjuna about all these third logos, or was the vision of Arjuna about even beyond, that is, going back to second logos, or even beyond, going to the unmanifested and comprising of everything under the central spiritual sun, or everything in the abstract container? That is something which we need to understand. Now, this relates back to the idea of whether the vision was about cosmos or cosmos. And HPP uses these two terms, which are slightly different. One starts with a K, another starts with a C. So, we will try to understand this concept because in Secret Doctrine, both these terms are used throughout. Now, here, the previous diagram which we saw, um, uh, we can see that this whole everything from unmanifested to the many manifested is actually the cosmos with a K. And these independent systems, these yellow dots, what we are seeing, is actually the cosmos. So one subsystem is a cosmos with a C. The entire everything in the absolute abstract space is the cosmos with a K. Now, um, based on chapter 11, what we will get an impression that Lord Krishna is talking about the cosmos with a C. And what Arjuna saw perhaps is the cosmos with a C. Because the descriptions which Arjuna has given of his divine vision in the various shlokas, they pertain only, or they seem to pertain only to the cosmos with a C and not beyond. But again, we also need to remember, as mentioned earlier, that even the highest dhyanis in our system don't have much idea beyond our system. So our system is the cosmos with a C, and even the highest dhyanis do not have much idea beyond it. So how is it possible that Arjuna got a divine vision of beyond it? So most probably he might have got the vision about the cosmos with a C only. So this is how we are trying to understand. But Arjuna is the person who really knows what he saw. So another important concept we need to understand is that of the reflected fractal nature, wherein everything is a copy of the whole. Not only that, it's also reflected. So we have this interesting point on SD 198, which is one is the one and all, and others are its reflected parts. And then we see that every monad is a living mirror of the universe within its own sphere. And mark this, HPB says, for upon it depends the power possessed by these monads, and upon these depends the work they can do for us. In mirroring the world, the monads are not mere passive reflective agents, but spontaneously self reflective. So, what's happening is we saw that the term monad can be used not only for individual jivatmas, it can also be used for systems, entities, units, universes, galaxies, logos in one way. So we see that our system is an aggregate of monads. And the whole system for us, let's say the page 200 diagram, considering it as the cosmos and the whole system itself is a monad, which is an aggregate of countless monads. But this monad at this level is actually reflecting the other monads, which is reflecting and mirroring the whole. And the let's say this is a part, the cosmos with the C is a part. It's reflecting the absolute, and the absolute in the absolute. This is also reflected. So there are two things happening. One is that the part is a copy of the whole, and the whole is a copy of the part. And not only that, the second aspect to this is that they are reflecting each other. So whatever happens there happens here, or whatever happens here has an effect there. That's how every part is connected with every part, and every part reflects every part. Now, man, the microcosm, is also a monad from this perspective. So the microcosm is reflecting the macrocosm and the whole, and vice versa. So you see how we are also connected, and we are also a copy, and we also reflect. So this is another aspect of the divine vision. And then another important point we need to consider is that what is mentioned on 138, volume 1, that the whole manifested solar system exists or exists in its sukshma or subtle form in the light or energy of the logos, because its energy is caught up and transferred to cosmic matter. The whole cosmos with a K in its objective form is Vaikhari Vak. The light of the Logos is Madhyama form, and the Logos itself the Pashyanti form, and Parabrahm the Para form. So it is going back to the idea of Vak, and we know that Vak is of four types. We have the Para, Pashyanti, Madhyama, and Vaikhari. And now this is a formula which is given to us. We can apply this formula on an cosmic scale with a K. We can also apply this to the cosmos with a C. We can also apply this inside the cosmos with a C at different levels. Pardon me. So here we can see that we have this fractal universe, and if you see on the left hand side in the four Rupa planes, each globe is actually a reflection of all the other globes. So you see the page 200 diagram which is embedded in each of the globes. So here we are seeing that each globe is also a monad, and it is reflecting other monads, and it's reflecting the whole of the system. Now, one approach of the formula is the approach vertically, which we are seeing from the right hand side. So first Arupa plane, we have the Para form. Second Arupa plane, we have the Pashyanti form. Third Arupa plane, we have the Madhyama. Then everything which is projected in the light of the third logos is the Vaikhari. So all the four Rupas come in the Vaikhari. Then the other approach is on the left hand side. If we see all the three planes are Paravak, and then the archetypal world is Pashyanti, intellectual creative is Madhyama, that is the plane 2, and then the next is the Vaikhari. The other way is, there are many ways. The third way would be that the Parabrahm is the Para, and then the unmanifested or the manifested is Pashyanti, and the whole of the Arupa planes is Madhyama, and the whole of Rupa planes is Vaikhari. Now, we need to also understand that the primordial Dhyani Buddhas maintain the state and equilibrium of the cosmos. So, once the manifested cosmos is in place, it needs to be sustained. And the Dhyani Buddhas, the primordial Dhyani Buddhas, are maintaining this state. So, they are in a state of very high meditation, and they are sustaining it. So when we are saying Vak, Vak is also logos, Vak is also verbum, Vak is also sound. So this is also related to what is mentioned in the Vedas as the Nada Brahma or Shabda Brahma. Shabda again means word or sound. Nada is also sound. Now think of a vibration. Let's say you are pronouncing something, and when you make a sound, if the sound is continuously coming out of your mouth, then that vibration is sustained. But what you are hearing is the Vaikhari Vak. Behind that is the Madhyama, Pashyanti, and at the highest thought level is the Para. So from thought level Para, it manifested as Vaikhari. But when you are chanting or expressing that sound, it when it is continuously coming, it needs to be sustained because it's the out breath. And the moment your sustenance stops, what will happen is this world will collapse. So that collapse would happen at the end of the system cycle. That is end when the end of the cycle comes, when the pralaya comes or the mahapralaya comes. But this vibration which is coming from the first plane, the top of the apex of the triangle is being sustained or calibrated or maintained, which is the duty of the primordial Dhyani Buddhas. And then a very interesting thing we see in one of the books known as Vedasara Shivastotram, wherein it says that the absolute only one is the one everlasting cause behind everything, and it is itself uncaused and unborn. And if we see the different states of our consciousness, that is waking, deep sleep, or rather waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, they are all arising as objects and then sustaining for some time and then dissipating. In the substratum and the field of the fourth one, which is Turiya, this is very important because that means from our plane of consciousness, Turiya itself is the reality, the highest reality where we can reach. Everything is actually a dreamlike state. So even our waking state is a dreamlike state. And all these states are periodically working through in the substratum of the fourth, which is the Turiya. So applying that, mapping the states of consciousness to the cosmos with a C, we can see that the globe D is could be mapped to Jagrat waking. The next level, C and E globe to the Swapna or the dream. B and F, the next level of Rupa planes to Shushupti, the deep sleep. And the first level or the first plane of Rupa, globe A and G to Turiya, the fourth. So that means it is Turiya the highest possible, which is the plane of consciousness which man can achieve. And that's where we see that the third plane of Arupa starts. Now, that is where we have the ring pass knot, and that is where we have the Lipikas. So, the point here is again, as per Kabbalah, we see that there are three kinds of light, and the fourth one is interpenetrating. So, fourth one is equivalent to the Turiya. So, the three are the clear, objective, reflected, and the abstract. So, if we map that on the left hand side of the diagram, we see that we have the objective, which is equivalent to the waking, reflected to the dream, abstract to the deep sleep, and interpenetrating to the fourth Turiya. Why are we trying to understand this? Because unless and until we get deeper into whatever is mentioned in Secret Doctrine, correlate with the divine form, only then we will be able to comprehend and take our minds to the higher and higher planes to understand the divine form. And in this process, we will be performing the yoga of the divine form. And then we also need to understand that the each plane we have a Laya point also. And this is very important, and we'll see how this fits in the whole divine form at a later stage. Now, the whole cosmos must necessarily exist in the one source of energy from which this light fohath emanates. We should keep this point at the back of our mind, and we'll see how this is also connected to the cosmos. But I think we have reached a good point where we can take a small break and get into some questions.
Okay. Vikash, I'm going to share my screen. So please formulate your questions and your thoughts, but I'd like to read out just a very small portion of this chapter 11, which is kind of the center of this theme, the divine form, just to give everyone a taste of it or just to be reminded of it. So as chapter 11 unfolds, Krishna makes the point, as Vikash had mentioned earlier, but as with thy natural eyes, thou art not able to see me. I will give thee the divine eye, Behold my sovereign power and might. And of course, Sanjaya is observing all of this and reporting it back to the king. And then Arjuna, who's given this divine vision, does his level best to explain it or to describe it. And he says, I behold, O God of gods, within thy frame all beings and all things of every kind. The Lord Brahma on his lotus throne, all the rishis and the heavenly serpents. I see thee on all sides, of infinite forms, having many arms, stomachs, mouths, and eyes, but I can discover neither thy beginning, thy middle, nor thy end. O universal Lord, form of the universe, I see thee crowned with a diadem and armed with mace and chakra, a mass of splendor, darting light on all sides, difficult to behold, shining in every direction with light immeasurable, like the burning fire or the glowing sun. Thou art the supreme, inexhaustible being, the end of effort, changeless, the supreme spirit of this universe, the never-failing guardian of eternal law. I esteem thee Purusha. I see thee without beginning, middle, or end, of infinite power with arms innumerable, the sun and moon thy eyes, thy mouth a flaming fire, overmastering the whole universe with thy majesty. Space and heaven and earth and every point around the three regions of the universe are filled with thee alone. The triple world is full of fear, O thou of mighty spirit, seeing this thy marvelous form of terror. Of the assemblage of the gods, some I see fly to thee for refuge, while some in fear with joined hands sing forth thy praise.